Crymachina was a game that got a lot more hype than I expected it to, and I really wasn't sure why at the time. To be honest, I still don't get it. At its core, the game is a somewhat fast-paced action RPG that looked pretty good in promotional videos they showed prior to its release, but I felt a lot of hesitation about the game because it seems for the last few years of creating content, I've seen a number of anime-style games look way better than they ended up playing. Being mid is probably the more hip way of describing this, cool kid. If you're a longtime subscriber, stay tuned because I got a special ending to this video. My first worry was the combat. I had wondered how smooth it would be, and surprisingly in this case, the game pretty much delivered on what we saw. I played on the PC and everything felt very buttery, fast-paced, and connected. There wasn't a whole lot of jank between me pressing the buttons and getting immediate feedback in the fight. It's something we do see, but not nearly as often as I would like to with anime-styled action games on consoles and PC. Weirdly though, we do see this a lot in current mobile action fighters, and if I'm being honest here, that's almost what this game feels like in a few ways. The animations are really flashy, and the bigger fights in the game have a lot to do with specific timings to attack, dodge, and counter the enemy. Smoothness aside though, the combat wasn't very overly complicated, and depending on the type of person you are, you might find it to be a little mediocre, or button mashy even on actual challenging difficulties. I did not play the game through to 100% or even completion, but from my experience, even with the upgrades and leveling, the combat is samey throughout. I'm again out here doing my typical thing and saying that the normal difficulty on this one was a little bit steeper than what I'm comfortable with. The first kind of big fight you get into on a regular map pretty much beat me down on repeat. I ended up moving the difficulty to the lower setting just to continue playing. This, unfortunately, is one of those games where there's a massive gap between difficulties as far as challenge is concerned though. I much would have preferred some extra time to make time dodge or even just more HP for me and less for the big HP sponge enemies, but instead moving down in difficulty basically made the game a brainless button masher that was nearly impossible to lose in during the first part of the game. It immediately made me realize this absolutely was not the game for me. I personally feel like the way the difficulty is structured, you basically get one of two options: play for the story or play for the combat. Not for me, but I know for a fact many of you watching do fall into one of those categories, and while I feel a little negative about the bulk of the experience, it's not hard to see that this game would get a few of you out there going. As always, bring on the smack talk in the comments about me playing on easy, because I've heard it all before, and at least I'm being honest. For those of you into the story, I think there's a bit to enjoy here. The initial premise is fairly catching, as it introduces you into a very bizarre and mysterious sci-fi world, somewhat like Soma even. Anyone even get that reference? Without going into great detail, the story is set in the future and takes place after humankind has gone extinct. A structure in space known as Eden is filled with AI based off human minds, and the plot is introduced by explaining there are multiple factions, so to speak, at war over being the one in charge. There's a lot more to it than that, and the story kind of plummets ahead into a lot of different concepts, but to me, the bigger draw to this game is the plot rather than the rest of the gameplay, and there's no sense in spoiling it during a first impressions video. As far as the characters go, I don't know. They are okay, I guess. A lot of people thought this game was connected to Crystar, and I've seen people make comparisons. The only actual comparison I'd make between the two is that the characters feel similar to me in the way they are emotionless, looking while being emotional. It's really hard for me to look at the characters when they're crying or feeling anything and think, damn, she's really hurting inside. If you wanted a quick mind picture, just imagine looking at an old doll on a shelf and seeing actual human tears streaming down its face. It's disconnected, and I'd probably say that was an artistic choice. It's robotic and still, but really it's a game about robots, so why not? The design of the characters is cool though. I really dug the art style, and while not the most popular brand of anime, I felt it fit the theme well, and the game really well, and leaned into the overall presentation great. It's dark and edgy and a little messy. The atmosphere is another highlight in my eyes. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but personally the game felt like Monarch to me, where it's kind of big and lifeless in an almost light liminal spaces kind of way. The levels are really condensed in where there's detail and very sparse and floaty outside of that. A lot of the levels at the beginning are just slabs of material or blocks sloping up and down, while everything around it looks huge and open. Graphically, it's kind of cool, I thought, but I could see other people believing it to be a little bargain bin-like or cheap, while still offering something with decent enough textures and lighting. I play a lot of games on Switch, so I'm not super graphically inclined, but the game felt clean and sterile, which matches with robots, AI, and liminal spaces. Overall, the game wasn't my favorite of the year, and I hate to say I told you so, but told you so. A lot of people jumped in on this hype train like the game was going to be some kind of AAA masterpiece or an underground hit, but while it's not a bad game, it's not overly a great game. That's not to say this game won't absolutely find a number of fans that scratch their itch just right, or find others who don't mind slogging through it all just to fill a void between games, but I'm not pegging this as being a Game of the Year contender, nor is it likely anyone is going to put it in the top 5. It's a mid-tier game and it fills a niche, so I gotta respect it. Ending on a little soapbox here, I gotta say I really think it's important that the gaming industry continue making games like this for specific people, because in a world where so many try to be one-size-fits-all, we need those aberrant spices to be able to find games that really fit us exactly. I'm Dre with Yokuso Otaku. If you like this content, hit the thumbs up. If you don't, hit the thumbs down, and subscribe to Yokuso Otaku for more anime news, reviews, and gaming. If you've been around on the page for a while, I have something special for you. Look at this! It's the annoying beeping device. And this, it's a new battery. I'm gonna install it. Look, the annoying beepy thing has a new thing installed. Hooray! No more beeping during our videos.